Hello, law teachers, and welcome to Learning is Not Quiet presents Battle of the Bacteria. Today, I'm going to talk about how to use this particular product from my Teacher Pay Teacher store in your classroom successfully. I'm going to talk about some of the strengths of this product. I'm going to talk about some of the pitfalls to avoid, and one pitfall I want to begin with is that this product is not the kind of product that you can purchase at 8 a.m. and expect to use by noon the same day. It does require a little bit of prep work. It does require a few purchases, so just be mindful of that and make sure that you're making the right decision if you're going to embark on this journey with your students. I have used this for 7 years in my classroom, and actually with multiple classes that switched periods. So I think that this is totally worth it. It's not an unmanageable amount of work, but it is something that you need to be aware of and make the right choice for yourself and your students. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the strengths. I'm going to talk about the pitfalls. I'm also going to talk about ways to differentiate this so that you can meet the needs of all of your students. So without further ado, let's begin. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you have purchased or are interested in purchasing this Battle of the Bacteria, Cells, and Petri Dishes article and experiment report. Please note that prices are subject to change, but this is how much it costs as of me taping this particular video. So kind of an overview of this product. What we're doing is we're culturing bacteria. What that means is we're going to swab or take a sample of what the bacteria is on different surfaces throughout our school. We're going to put them in a secluded environment where they can grow and be happy, and then we're going to observe that bacteria. Now, if you have done this as someone who went to college and got a degree in biology or chemistry or biochemistry or something like that, please note that your experiment is going to be very different than what I am presenting today. You could, of course, identify the different types of bacteria. That's not something that's included in this product. You can do more microscopic analysis and things like that. That's also not included in this product. So this is really about getting kids the experience of going to different places, swabbing, and growing that bacteria in their classroom. It also includes, and one of the strengths I think of this product is it's very cross-curricular. One of the things students walk away from this product with is the importance of hygiene and washing their hands, especially after touching certain surfaces that students touch all the time. That's really something that I emphasize in this particular lesson series, and is usually successful with students. So it kind of hits health topics. It also includes meaningful graphing, so students applying those math concepts. It includes a Battle of the Bacteria article, so reading and reading strategies. It includes a writing report and paragraph and essay writing. So you're including those language arts writing strategies. And of course, it's about science. This is usually the block I use it in when I'm teaching 5th grade. When I taught 7th grade, I use this kind of as my whole lesson for a chunk of time. The amount of time it takes to do this is about 2 weeks, but note that you're not going to be doing something with it every day for 2 weeks. You just need to give the bacteria time to culture. So that's kind of the overview. You're reading, you're culturing the bacteria, you're making observations, you're writing a report, and you're graphing. So that's the overview. Now let's get into what specific lessons look like in here. Oh, and just be mindful, if I didn't say this before, you can purchase this if you are not familiar with this product or my Teachers Pay Teachers page. There are links in the description. So before you begin, you need to set yourself up for success. You need to get all of these materials. So Petri dishes, cupcake liners, plastic closable baggies, or small plastic containers. Note the or. You don't need all of those things. You need or. I think every time that I've done this, I have purchased the Petri dishes, and I strongly recommend that just because they're a consistent size and it makes it easier to do things like area on them. It also is more consistent. It keeps it easier sealed. It's easier to interact with. They are a little bit pricey for a classroom activity. It is something that I know I'm going to be doing at the beginning of the year, and I actually ask for this as a donation from parents at back to school night, even if they're only throwing $1 or $2. So definitely recommend the Petri dishes. You can also do this with cupcake liners. If you make the agar, which is the jelly stuff that I'm going to describe in a second, and put that whole cupcake liner inside of a baggie. Key thing, you want to make sure that it is a controlled environment for scientific purposes. You also want to make sure it's a sealed environment for health purposes. You don't want students, especially those with asthma, allergies to mold, and things like that, you don't want them breathing this in. You yourself don't want to breathe this in. So please, please, please make sure whatever you use, it is something that you seal. That's the big safety health kind of concern of this activity. So before you go into classroom, the night before, what you need to do is you need to get all of these supplies, so the Petri dishes, the masking tape, permanent markers. I mean, we're really just writing on top of the Petri dishes, so kind of interpret that as you see best. You'll also need 4 cups of water, cotton balls or swabs. You can also use Q-tips. I have used tissues in this before, and that works great as well. You need 4 packets of plain gelatin. So sometimes gelatin will be flavored because it's turning into Jell-O. You do not want that. You want the plain gelatin. It will often come in a big box, and what I have done is I've actually saved that box for many years, and I just use the same enormous box of gelatin over and over and over again. So you also need some sugar and some beef bouillon cubes. Those are available, all of those are available at your grocery store. Ask someone at the grocery store for help if you have trouble finding them. I never use beef bouillon in my cooking, so I always need to ask someone's assistance when I go to the grocery store to find it. It is also available on Amazon. And obviously, you need copies of the Battle of the Bacteria article, the hallway passes, the lab sheet, and the lab report structure guidelines that are included in this product. So to prepare the Petri dishes, again, this is before you go into school. You need to mix together, probably in a large pot, 4 packets of the plain gelatin, 4 beef bouillon cubes, 8 tablespoons of sugar, and water in a large pot. You want to bring it to a boil for about 5 minutes, ensuring that the mixture is well blended. Cool and distribute evenly into the Petri dishes, cupcake liners, and or plastic containers. Key thing here is I would recommend using a ladle because it's really easy to get it even into all of the Petri dishes. I one time made the very foolish mistake. It still worked, so this is how you do it in a pinch, but I don't recommend this. I took a large beaker and boiled the water in the beaker and just dissolved the beef bouillon, the gelatin, and the sugar in this giant beaker and at school in the microwave on my lunch break and poured it into the Petri dishes. It worked, but it was a very stressful experience and created a huge mess in the teacher's lounge. So not recommended, but that is something you can do in a pinch. So you want to let this sit in the refrigerator overnight. In that case, it was at school, in the teacher's lounge, throughout the rest of the day and into the next, so that it forms a hardened substance at the bottom of the container. It really looks like a kind of jelly. If you're using cupcake liners, make sure you put them in individual sealable bags. There are lots of videos on how to make agar, A-G-A-R. If you search on YouTube, that is definitely available with a whole bunch of different strategies and more tips. So if you're interested in that, make sure you check those out as well. So that's kind of the prep before you come to school, and that's the scariest part of this experiment. So if you're done with that, you're in good shape. So now I'm going to go through lesson number 1. This is the Battle of the Bacteria article, and what this is about is it really differentiates a virus from a bacteria, which is especially important. As I'm recording this, we're going through the coronavirus, and there's a lot of interest in bacteria versus viruses and how that works out. There are also comprehension and vocabulary questions that follow, and I actually put these on my word wall in my science classroom, virus and bacteria, and the different terms that we associate with them. I also connect this usually in my biology units to prokaryotic versus eukaryotic organisms. Bacteria are obviously prokaryotic and all of these kinds of things. So this I do. Sometimes also with this, SciShow has a great set of videos on sponges having bacteria. So there's all kinds of good stuff you can use to get students involved and interested in this topic. Okay. Then, so that's pretty much lesson 1. That takes the whole class period. One of the things you can do to differentiate this for students is you can have them just highlight the words they know if they're an English language learner and just need to practice those sight words. You can also have students parallel read this with a buddy. So one person reads one sentence, one person reads another sentence. If you have a class that's pretty low or you want to pull a group over who maybe has an IEP, you can, of course, read the article out loud and have them follow along with their finger. Okay, so now we're going to move on to lesson 2. So this is usually day 2. So day 1, we introduce the Battle of the Bacteria, the first reading practice. Day 2 is when we really start getting into it. You want to make sure that you have these hall passes printed. What they say is, I'm in blank's class. So for me, it'd be, I'm in Mrs. Benavides' class, obtaining samples for a science experiment. I am expected to return to class at blank. I am going to the blank and to the bathroom to wash my hands. Please sign if I was not conducting myself in a mature scientific manner. So this is when I actually have students, and there's some brainstorming activities where I have them brainstorm what they think the dirtiest place is in the school, what they think the cleanest place is in the school. And this just kind of starts getting them to think about it. And once they're ready, they really need to have picked one cleanest place and one dirtiest place. And I usually have them do this in about a group of 3 students. And I give them a hall pass, especially important for 5th graders. because it gives them some independence. It is a little scary. You're sending your whole class, or at least part of your class, out into the school to do something without adult supervision, but this really prevents anything bad from happening. And I also go over with my students, if a fire drill happens during this time, what are you going to do? If a lockdown happens during this time, what are you going to do? So that way there's no snafus. I did have a lockdown drill in the middle of this activity one time, and thankfully I had gone through what to do with my students beforehand, and they were totally safe and locked in the bathroom. So those are just some pitfalls you might want to avoid. And I write the time for 7 minutes after I have them leave. So if they left my classroom at 10 a.m., I expect them to be back by 10:07. And to not get points off from their team or any kind of punishment, they have to come back with that slip. They can't throw it out. And I can see if any other teacher has signed it, and there's, of course, consequences that go with it. So that's just kind of a classroom management strategy for this. You do not want to send your whole class out into the world with no adult supervision to take swabs, because this will soon become a social hyperactivity. So once they have collected those samples, what they do is they swab the area. They run their Q-tip or their Kleenex or whatever over the area. Then they dab it on top of their Petri dish jelly, and then they seal it. They walk back to the classroom, and we take some masking tape and a expo marker, and we write exactly where we found it. You'll notice in my example the first time, I did not have students write specific enough to places that they found it, and then they did forget as we went on. So make sure you're being very specific in where the students took that swab sample, especially because sometimes there's more than one person who goes to like the gym or the bathroom, and you want to make sure they're saying like the third stall from the doorway handle. You want them to be as specific as possible, because it helps it be clearer, and it also is great science. So when they come back, or before they come back, they're going to fill out this sheet, which has them identify the definitions and answer the questions if you didn't do it yesterday. And you also want them to fill in this lab sheet. So the question here is, which area of the school will have the most bacteria after a sample swab is collected and cultivated in a Petri dish for 2 weeks? Which area of the school will be the cleanest, containing the least bacteria? Again, I know this is least and most bacteria is kind of a very subjective thing, but it just really gets the kids into this mindset without having to buy very expensive technology and tools. So they're creating that hypothesis, they're identifying the parts of the experiment. This is all lesson number 2. So now we get into lesson number 3, which is the fun part. So these all happen day 1, day 2. Lesson 3 happens a week later. So I'll continue with cells lessons, whatever in between. It's not that my science stops, but and it's not like you're doing this every single day for 2 weeks. I literally have it sit in a drawer in my classroom in a kind of cool area, because it can melt if it's summertime, for a whole week, and the kids do not look at it. So lesson 3. They're going to do the week 1 observations continued. Number of bacteria types in the dirtiest location, number of bacteria types in the cleanest location. Again, this refers to their particular selected dirtiest and cleanest. When I say types, I have them look for colors or differences in the different bacteria, and I'll show you a picture of what that looks like in a sentence. What percentage approximately of the Petri dish is occupied by bacteria in the dirtiest location versus the cleanest location, and then they draw pictures. Please note that you can be unscientific about this if your students, if you're time short, or if your students aren't as mathematically skilled yet. You can have them kind of guesstimate, is it about 50%, 30%, 80%? Or if you're kind of advanced, you can take the Petri dishes, you can put them on top of centimeter paper, you can have them trace and outline where the bacteria is and get a more specific amount or percentage of that Petri dish that's covered with bacteria. So this is what that looks like, and you can see it's really cool that you can see all the different types of bacteria. Again, I should have been more specific when I was doing this, but the kids have so much fun doing this all the time. And then for lesson 4, this is, again, the students doing this time on graph paper. You can see I got a lot smarter as I went along and labeled it. I have students, I call them over table by table to the back, and they measure and calculate the area taken up by their bacteria. I then have them do the data, and this is usually the day after our second week observations. They rate the location, the types of bacteria, percentage covered, and we now do this for the whole class. And then finally, we do a lab report outline. So this gives students exactly what they need to fill in all the parts of their lab report. An obvious extension on this is to have students write their own essay without those frameworks and sentences. If you enjoyed this particular product, be sure to check out all the many more cells and science products available